Hello. First up, we have Deborah. You got a lot of the basic shapes in there, so that's good. The first thing I noticed that's going to make everything more challenging is the way this whole thing is at an angle. And for the initial model, you're always going to want to build everything straight. One thing I do a lot of using the hotbox, hold on the space bar, click in the center, and you can look at this in the different views. And you can see from above everything is a bit off kilter and at an angle. Um, Here you've got one wheel off the ground. So that's going to make everything more difficult. So the first thing I would do is straighten everything out, um, which is a little tricky. So what I noticed, for example, is this wheel has some rotation on it. Like, let's look at the Z. So you'd expect, that says minus 84, you'd expect it, for example, to be minus 90. And then you can see in the front view, or let's say the back view. So that looks more or less straight up and down, and then this is probably 0, and then this is probably minus 180. So I can see that that's straight now. And then the other thing I'd want is to put it along the origin. If I click on this guy and hold down X for grid snap, that's, you see this button getting pushed down when I hold down X, then it'll grid snap only in this direction without moving it up or down. And so now I can see that that wheel is looking straight. Of course, that means everything associated with it is no longer lined up with it, which makes things a little tricky. Um, so I don't know how necessarily you got to the point where everything was a little bit off, but um, although I have a guess, actually, if all of these are the same amount, they're not. Because it could be that they were grouped and the group was rotated and then they were ungrouped, because it looks like everything is just in one really big group, and that prior to that you had these other groups like this one. That was for the handlebars, it looks like, originally. Um, yeah, so see how this has these weird rotates on it? And I think they were parented to that, a lot of this stuff, and they were unparented. Um, they kind of inherited the, like if I take a sphere, let's just do a quick little experiment here. If I take a sphere and it's right here, I'm going to do Control G to group it. Okay, and right now the group's rotates are zeroed out, and the sphere's rotates are zeroed out. So if I take this group, let's center the pivot on that group just to keep things. So if I rotate this group, no, so now I see I have these rotations on the group node. Let's check the sphere. These are still zeroed out. But if I now unparent this sphere from that group node, I'll do Shift P. You can do also Edit Unparent. Let's see what happens. See how the sphere now has these weird rotates on it um, that match what was on the group node they were parented to. And what does it do if I parent this to that again? It zeroes them back out again. So, and then if I zero these out, that gets straightened out. So, but the problem is with this is they're no longer parented. I think if you could find which of these group nodes that these things were associated with, and then parent them back to that, and then zero out the group, you could fix these all together rather than individually, which, unless they all happen to have exactly the same, but they don't. If I look at those 33, 34, da da da, see they're all different from each other, and that is going to make it harder. Um, unless you can find out which one they're associated with. So either you would go through them individually and straighten them out, or you could find the group node, reparent it, and zero out the group node. It's just unfortunate they're no longer associated with the group node. So at some point, it looks like you just took all of these and grouped them, which pulled them out from their original group nodes. And I don't know that there'd be a quick way to do that. So anyway, it's going to take some sorting out to get this straightened out again. I mean, most of it's all the same, so I guess what you could try without all getting into all of that detail is try to just, kind of eyeball it. Um, and just get it, the best you can by eyeballing it. If I make this a bit, I'm use a plus and minus, I can make that a little bit bigger. Um, so this is not an ideal way to work because everything is going to be like a tiny bit off probably, but also I don't want to take the time to do it because I'm not exactly sure how we're going to get there, given everything being slightly off kilter. Um, so I might, if you have a previous version where those weren't removed by those groups, you could go group by group and clean up. And so that's what I would tend to do is try to go back to a previous version. Yeah. Anyways, the I think yeah, like I said, you got a lot of the basic shapes in there. I did post a tutorial if you want to get a chainring with more detail. You can check that out. It looks like you've got something penetrating the tire here, this and this, and so you're gonna most likely want to make those sort of fork um, around the wheel and tire here, so they're not penetrating that. And yeah, you'll want to work to give this more detail. What I would do is start with a cube and then, kind of extrude parts of it out to match the shape of the um, seat. Um, and yeah, and just get in there, get a little more accurate with these things, how they attach together. Um, and so forth. So, yeah, I would say you've got the basic shapes, but the thing that's just going to make everything more difficult is how everything goes a bit off kilter. And going back through and straightening it out, if you have a previous version where they were straight, that's going to be a much better way to start. And just make sure, any rotations you have here, they should be, in multiples of 90 degrees, either 0 or 90 or 180 or 270 or 360. Like that's probably the only numbers for most of the stuff that you're going to see in most of these. If you took this individual thing and rotated it, to get it at that angle, right, that one's going to be different, right? But, most of the time, the other numbers will stay pretty straight. So, um, yeah, but yeah, so try to take a step back, see if you have a version where things are perfectly perpendicular, and then I would say move forward from there rather than trying to use this one, where everything's at slightly different angles. Next we have Cameron and his motorcycle. Let's take a look. Yeah, this is looking just great. It's really good. Um, let's take a look at some of the details here. You've got this nice coil. Um, I've seen this trend of people combining surfaces like this, and I'm not sure why that. I've seen this happening more and more. Um, but I don't, for me, there's not a reason to combine something unless it's going to form one seamless object at the end of the process. For example, if you have two halves of a head or a body that you would combine those two halves into one. But for something that's made out of individual parts like this that are sort of, screwed or welded together, there's no reason that I can think of to combine them. So, which is done, I'm assuming, whoops, that you've done that by mesh combine, and you can undo that with mesh separate usually. So, and then the thing is that later when we get into, or actually, there's another kind of a cool trick, and this is a little dangerous, but I'll show you anyway. It's like I can see you still have the history on here, and it looks like the last thing you did was this unite thing, which I think is the same as combine. If I go into the attribute editor and I click on the tab with that unite thing, and then I hit select, and then I hit the delete key, oops, on the keyboard. I don't think I like that. It got rid of. Let me try to do that again. Select. Let me just click here real quick first, and then hit delete. Oh, that worked. Oh no, so it's taking off the material for some reason. It's probably because you combined it first and then assigned a material to the combined one. So I'll just do it the way I did in the first place, which was separate. Anyway, so I mean, you can go back and look at that smooth again if you want, but when we get into UV mapping, which is kind of preparing the surface for texturing, having a complex combined set of shapes like that is only going to make things harder. So that's one reason specifically not to combine them. So something like this where if you want that to be a rounded shape, and by the way, let's pull up the reference real quick. So I think we're looking at this thing here. So what I would tend to say is don't just rely on hitting 3 to make that smooth. What you'll probably want to do is use the smooth. So we can just hit that right here, and then you've actually got surface detail that's getting that to be the shape you want. And then if I go 1, it looks like that. 2, 3, I can still see that sort of smooth preview version of it, but the smooth command actually increases the number of edge loops and rounds things out, so you'll probably want to do it that way. Yeah, I'm just a lot of good detail and proportions going on here. Let's just do some kind of, sometimes what I'll do, if I do control spacebar or command spacebar on Mac, it'll full screen this. And then let's get up this guy. Whoops, no, it'll be the preview thing. And Windows, right? And then here we go. So this is kind of a nice way to look at these side by side and see, where you've done well and where you could improve. So the one thing I'm seeing is the shape of this guy is looking a little different from this. So you might want to work on that shape a little bit. And one kind of, since you've already got a pretty good start to the shape, you might, if you go into, gotta get my tools back here, actually in the animation menu, create deformers, lattice, and then add maybe some more divisions here. Actually, probably don't need any, well, whatever. And then this is kind of a quick way to, I don't know why it built it at that slight angle. It shouldn't have done that. Oh, it looks like the whole thing is at a slight angle, which is not so great. I'm going to undo this. So if I look at its top view, yeah, see how this is at a bit of an angle here? Let's take a look at the rotations here. So looks like if this is zeroed out, that would be zeroed out. And this one doesn't matter as much because you're using that to angle it up, which is fine. Okay, whoops. So now that I've done that, I'll do the lattice thing again. And like I said, let's just add some more divisions here. Maybe more than I needed, but It's just a nice way to kind of work on a shape. So it's definitely going to be right mouse click, choose lattice points, and then I think we're going to want to move these down here. Don't want to pinch that too much here because I'm selecting it from the side. I'm not actually selecting one there. That's actually, if we look in the perspective view, that's doing all the ones across there. Um, and I'm not going to take a ton of time to really do this all the way, but you get the idea where you can. And there actually is a little bit more of a thing there. Look, a little space there. You want to get that kind of more of that curve going here. So maybe that even could come up a little bit. And maybe this could kind of go. Oops, that's not looking so great. Anyways, you get an idea how you could form the shape a little bit better. And it looks like the bottom of this looks a lot more horizontal. And so what actually, if I were to do this again, what I might do is, before I did the lattice, rotate this back level again to get the bottom lined up, and then work on the shape of the top to form it better. Because I think you're relying too much of the angle of the whole thing to get that shape. So what else? This gap is very noticeable here, so if you wanted to get, this some of that kind of thing in there, that would help. I think that it's good that you've got this ridge going here, but it's looking, that distance looks, from the outer edge to that inner edge looks larger here than there. It looks a little pinched. Um, yeah, you can't really see the ridges from this point of view, so let's take a look at the perspective view. So that's nice how you got those. However, it looks like there are many more, and they're much thinner here. So you have these kind of things much thicker than those. Unfortunately, do you have one with a history still? If you had one with a history, you might be able to go back and do those all together, but the history is gone off of these, so I can't. Um, what else? Yeah, the spokes are looking good, and let me just do this again. Control space bar. I'm picking on this. I mean, the thing is, it's very good. I'm just, but I always look for what you can improve. So, I mean, overall, it's great. You've done a great job. If you guys see this where they look black, 9 times out of 10, that's the normals got reversed. Maybe the way you mirrored it over the other side did that. If I go to normals reverse, usually that fixes it. And I've had something happen. And by the way, if I do a function like normals reverse and I want to do it again, if I select an object and hit the G key, as in go, it will do it again. Oh, and there's that combine thing again. So I've had a thing where like in one person will be using one version of Maya, and they almost won't be reversed, and then they open in another version. So if it's not reversed in yours, don't worry about it. I'm just saying if you see that weird black thing, 9 times out of 10, that's why. You are missing the pedal, which I think is. I mean, obviously you can't do every little bolt and screw, but the pedal feels like kind of an important detail to include. Just you know, it's something people will miss. I think it might be nice to get this sort of shape here. Um, look at things like the thickness of this compared to that. Um, but and I think that yeah, I mean that looks wide to me. But then again, yeah, I don't know if you have more reference for this bike. My instinct is these look a little bit thin and a little bit wide for that bike. Um, but again, if you can get another reference image of that or a similar bike, that'll probably help you decide. Um, and yeah, I think getting kind of some of this thickness here, some of that assembly here might help you out. Um, yeah, so that extra reflector there would be nice, and but yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm picking on it, but this is when you look at it from distance, you're like, wow, great motorcycle. So it's good. It's very good work. Um, And I think, you can keep going and improving it. And just again, it's this side by side kind of thing is a great way to just, you don't even necessarily need someone like me to critique it. You can critique it yourself just by looking side by side and saying, oh, that doesn't look like that. How can I fix it? Where do I see proportion or things? Where are details that are jumping out? And the thing to work on is sort of, you know, the try to do the bigger things that catch your eye first and work down to the smaller things. So I'm not worried about every bolt and screw first. I'm worried about things that just seem real different. Like I see a very clear kind of triangle shape here that's not represented there, or I see a big gap here or a big gap there. Look for things that jump out at you and fix those and then compare again and just keep repeating that cycle. Okay, next up we have Nadia. Yeah, so far this is looking very good. Um, you've got all kind of the basic parts going, and it looks, pretty together. Um, First thing, kind of looking to improve it, to looking at proportions. These tires look, this kind of distance from here to here, they look very wide to me compared to most bikes, and I'm not sure. I don't have this reference image. This Bedford. Da, 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 da. Sometimes I can Google it and find it, but it's always great if you can attach any source image files. But this is what came up when I Googled it, and right off the bat, yeah, you can see a lot of difference in the proportions. I want to do this side by side thing again. Oops, Control Space Bar, and then let's put this here and this there. So I don't know if this is the one you had in mind, but let's just assume it is, or use it as a reference to compare it to. And yeah, right off the bat, these tires are much thinner than those. The wheels are bigger. The Yeah, the seat looks a little thick here. The handlebars look a little thick, and also I can see these are kind of coming out at an angle towards facing the camera, where that would be in a very unusual shape for handlebars. Usually they'd be much more coming out to the side, almost straight out this way, but maybe at kind of an angle like that. Um, so yeah, I think the first thing to focus on is proportions, because to me the proportion, depending on what kind of bike you're doing, I don't know if this is the correct reference, but it does seem to have the same name as the file you had in there, so I'm guessing it was this one. But either way, um, you got to check the proportions, because right now they look odd. Because, for example, if this was kind of a kid's dirt bike, I would expect tires that big and maybe a frame this size, but then I would also expect the frame to be much thicker relative to the side. So, um, yeah, so I'd say work on the proportions first, then start getting into some more details. Get get another view on the handlebars, because that is would be a unusual shape for this kind of bike, and yeah, and keep going. Yeah, it looks like you've got the chain ring, but I think there'd be usually more teeth than that, and it's looking pretty thick um, compared to the rest of the bike. There's some nice detail on the pedal here. That's good, and I like this detail here on the crank arm. It's nice. So yeah, there's a good stuff going on here. You've got a lot of the basic shapes. I like this kind of paying attention to the support structure under the seat. So there's a number of good things going on here, but I think, get the proportions right um, first, and then once you've done that, you can continue adding detail. So next up we have Sebastian, and yeah, so right off the bat, this is looking really good. There's a lot of nice detail. Proportions look pretty good. Um, yeah, you've got the nice thin racing seat. It looks a little bit thin from left to right to me. but obviously that depends on the reference you're pulling from. Um, you've got a lot of detail on these. Looks like you've got a little sort of odd stretching and pinching in your topology there. And like here, things went a little awry, it looks like. Um, Sort of tricky to fix that at this point, but you know, and you'll want to kind of cut it at half and remirror it if you do something like this. But one thing, that can help a little bit that I'll do is, take something like this and let's put this here. So if I don't know if this is, it's going to be a little tricky. It's probably going to mess it up. So yeah, I guess here's an approach. Because this is in the middle of a curve, it's a little tricky. Um, what you can do that might help is if I get my modeling toolkit up and put the transform constraints to surface slide, then if I move this, it will move that point along the surface. Um, so the surface should stay for the most part the same shape, but I can clean up. I'm just going to shift double click here to get all of those at the same time and move these all up. So in theory, the surface will have the same shape, and mostly it will. I can see that it's pinched in there a little bit. Um, and then what I might do is, oops, yeah, so that one went a little nuts. So I'm probably going to turn this off now, and let's kind of clean that up a little bit more manually. And then maybe shift double click and take these guys and go back to the right front view. I'm going to move those down so they're matching a little bit better. So that's a little bit better. It's a little tricky here. I think, yeah, again, that one, because it's really pinched already, probably have to do with that constraint off. So anyways, that can give you an idea of how you might clean some of that up. And the thing that catches my eye the most on this bicycle are these things. Again, I mentioned in an earlier video how I noticed you combine these. Let me see the history here. We don't, which isn't really necessary. So the only times I tend to combine is if it's a seamless, continuous surface, like two sides of a face or two halves of a body. This is something made of different parts, and you have intersecting surfaces, so it's not a good candidate to combine. And where that will make things difficult is when you want a UV map. If I just look at the UV texture editor, I mean, the thing is like, which part of the wheel is which? Like, how would you ever know? It'd be really, it gets really challenging. So it's just not how I work. So don't combine unless it's a continuous surface, and then yeah, this is looking pretty cool. And again, you've combined it. I wouldn't combine it, but yeah, you've obviously put a lot of time and effort into making this chain, and that looks nice. Usually, when you've combined stuff, you can just say under the polygon menus, edit mesh, separate. Sorry, mesh, separate, and then it'll go back to its component parts again. So, anyways, I was saying I got into this by saying that this is the part that catches my eye, and I looked at. I was looking at some reference of carbon fiber wheels, and I think that, I mean, I don't know what reference you're using, but these look, I don't know, there's just a lot more to the shape, and these, the sort of rounded parts or kind of ridged parts here, and a lot of them I was finding in just a quick Google had the, 3 or 5. So it looked I guess odd. So I would, and that's the thing when you look at it. That's the thing to me that really catches my eye. Whereas, the water holders are looking good, and the chain is looking good, and this crank is looking good. Although you want to add a pedal, um, so there's a lot of nice details on here. You've even got these wires in, and then calipers, all this kind of good stuff in here. So um, yeah, and even the two brake handles. So yeah, there's nice stuff in here, um, uh, and so I would say that's what I would focus on is fixing this. Yeah, add the pedals. Check your proportions. The thing that looks a little funny to me are these handlebars. I might, just because these are a bit of a mess, I might just try again. Do them again. And the way you have this kind of sphere just kind of stuck on the end of that is not very clean modeling. So, um, for something like that, yeah, again, I would separate that out. And if you did want to do something like that, um, what you'd ideally want to do, let's center the pivot, modify center pivot. You would take, um, just make sure I got a good see, did not get a very good selection there. Just control clicking to deselect these. It wasn't sort of perfectly straight on from the side. Oh. Okay. Anyways, so, in a case where I would, let's see if these have the same number of. Oh, yeah, that's not really going to work so great, is it? Or no. So, what you'd want. Oh, and we've got some other weird. There's some other weird kind of set of edges here. Can I delete that? Control delete. Nope. What about this one? Control delete. That worked. Anyways, yeah, it's a little bit messed up there. But I guess the point is if you could have a clean sphere, half sphere, and a clean surface, and you have the same number of loops here, you could combine and merge those together. But that's not a great candidate for that. There's probably easier ways of doing that. Have I cleaned that up? It looks clean now, I think. Let's see if it lets me select this edge loop. It is, because you can do a mesh fill hole, and that will cover that. Although that shape can be tricky if you try to do anything like some. Oh, got some of that weirdness here again. I don't know exactly how this was constructed. That we're getting that control delete. Now this looks a little funny here. Maybe I can just delete that face, control delete. Okay, that looks a little bit more promising. Oh, there's one here. Anyways, getting caught up in the details here. So now you have that, and that's not really ideal to have a face with so many sides on it, but at least it sort of caps that off, and then see if you can get like a bevel to work here. Oh, it's not selecting around again, which is usually a bad sign. But what I can do is just select like that, and then control select to get rid of all those edges. And let's see if it'll let me do a bevel. I'm a little worried it might not. Oh, yeah. So we probably still had some of those little anomalies in that. Here's what we're gonna do. Because there was some weird stuff going on there. Let's go like a fresh edge here, and obviously you can pull this out a little bit, but I'm going to try that, see that fill hole again. And then let's see, I still have that selected. Let's see if it'll let me bevel. Ha, and that's nice and clean. And then with the bevel, I can get in there and I can increase, you know, the, let's say the roundness. Oh, that's probably good. I think we need more segments to see any more detail. Um, and then, is it an offset? I thought it was offset. No. Fractions. Oh, okay, here. Oh, fractions what I want. Yeah, so that's nice and big. Um, maybe some more segments. So much cleaner way to cap that off than just sticking a sphere on the end like you had. And I think that's a little bit more. And I think if you play with these settings more, I don't know why offset doesn't do anything, but I think it's maybe because of the auto fit. If I turn that off, it'll let me play with that. Let's see. Nope. Okay, not sure. Doesn't matter. Point is, that's going to be a better way to cap those off, I think. All right. Well, I spent a lot of time on this one. Anyways, overall good. I think the thing to reconsider is how you're doing these. Those are catching the eye, and then yeah, keep going with the kind of the adjustments and the detail of the rest. So next up is Crystal. And the file size was very big, and I'm not sure why. It doesn't look. I was looking at the poly counts, and maybe like higher than I would expect, but not high enough to justify the file size. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but anyway. So yeah, you've got some basic shapes with this, which is good. I've got. I'm going to turn off the wireframe unshaded you have on, and look at some of these in smoothed view, which that's all looking nice. That body shape. It feels like I don't have your reference, but this is feeling a little thin. Maybe I don't know. Maybe not. I guess when I look at the thickness of the frame here, those pieces look a little thin. And the way you've done the front and rear forks, they're bowing out quite wide there, which is one thing. So you want to bring these in. And another thing I noticed is, see how it's turning black here? I believe what's happened is when you did this, you've turned them inside out. So what I might do is start with this edge loop and maybe rotate this one a little bit. It's going to let me use my down arrow to go to the next one. I'll rotate that and see how it's kind of helping keep it, more even thing. Down arrow. And did it do a proper selection? It did not. It kind of freaked out. So let's double click on this one. And what happened is between these two, you've kind of turned it inside out, and that's where you're getting this weird black thing because we're seeing the inside surface of that. So, maybe something like that. And it doesn't want me to let me do the down arrow. Oh, left arrow worked. Okay. So sometimes, when you want to, you can like what they call pick walk along the surface. So let's see if left arrow works again. Yeah, it did. Great. Making my selections easier. So I'm just kind of, turning these the right way in. Yeah, and that really shows it right there, the kind of the flip that you've done in that one. So now that I've done that, I might scooch these in. So okay, let's use right arrow. Nope, left arrow. Put that in some. This one, something like that. Again, it would be better if I had a reference here to do this from, but certainly it's not going to swing out that far. Right arrow worked. Okay, just to get the gist of it, and so that's starting to look better. I feel like this distance between the tire and the fork is too big. I think, either this needs to be lower or tire needs to be bigger or something, but that looks like an unusually long gap there. But maybe it's a kind of bike. But again, and I think again you've done the same kind of flipping thing with that, and again those swing out a bit too wide. Um, yeah, seats okay. You've got it's kind of pinching a bit in front. You might work on that shape a little bit. And I mean the other thing that'll help is if you've kind of got this ridge sort of sticking out. So I might scale those in. So I'm using scale and kind of move those in towards each other a bit, and then I might do the same on the bottom, except for this guy, because that's already shift double click, control click to remove that selection, and then move these in towards each other, getting more of that rounded shape. And then I might scale this out a little bit because it's looking a little pinched. Oops, we got some extra something going on in here. Not sure how that happened. Got moved in, but yeah, so now it's a little bit asymmetrical, which I guess it already is pretty asymmetrical. So yeah, it's a little wacky. I might take another stab at that one and try to work more symmetrically when you do it. I mean, one thing you can do that helps a little bit is if I double click and get this whole loop, and I do scale and scale it into the center. See how that straightens out that line? And then what you can do is, you might do that with this guy too. Just kind of cleaning that up a bit. Although that's not so great for what's happening here. But then if one side's starting to look a little bit better, let's get this and move it back out a bit. Then I can delete the other half. And if we're lucky, it'll let us mirror the shape. So mesh, mirror geometry options. And this is the, looks like the Z axis. So that's the positive Z direction. So, because you can see the little blue Z is pointing that way. And merge the original, merge vertices. Let's see. Oh, okay, good. So now it's symmetrical again, and then you can continue. It does that thing in the middle. Wish it was smart enough not to do that. Let's try that. Oh, okay, that seemed to do it. That seemed to solve that. Okay, I guess I just connect border edges instead of merge. All right, so just double check. Not real thrilled that it turned that into a triangle somehow also, but just going to check. I just did a little marquee select over that vertex and made sure there's just one selected there. So it's my way of making sure that it didn't, there's not duplicate vertices along the border. So now at least we have a symmetrical seat, and then I think that you could then, um, work a little bit to get a better shape from there, and you have the straighter lines, and it's a little more cleaned up. Um, but yeah, I feel like that still needs some work. I feel like there's maybe too much. It helps a lot to just, whoops, Q to get rid of that scale tool, and then, oops, let me just select this one, and then shift select that one, and I'll do the ones in between. Can move that up a bit. Maybe, oops, just like that one, Q, that one, oops, this one, and then shift double click to get those. I'm just kind of flattening out this top a bit because it looks, again, Q to get rid of that. Why is it going? It should just do the ones in between when I that. Maybe move these down. Anyways, I'm just goofing around. What I would really want to do is work with some reference. You know, maybe now that this is a little more cleaned up, I can select all those and scale them in towards the center. And looks like I could use some more attention in this. But anyways, it's starting to look a little bit more. Anyways, it's not a really great idea to work without reference, so I'm just making this up as I go along. But I gives you a little bit of idea how we might kind of approach cleaning that up. Um, yeah, so again, a lot of good work here. I like the look of the chain ring, although some things going on here. See that weird kind of artifacting we're getting there. I think that's because they're sort of paper thin. Um, so pasted, and something's been copied and pasted here. And I mentioned earlier I don't really copy and paste so much as use the duplicate tool. So there's something going on with that, and something going on with the fact that these are paper thin. There's a bunch of deleted components here. Let's go back to some of these extrude. That's the length of those things. Local scale. I guess what I'm guessing is that when you extruded, maybe you extruded the edge and not the face. That's kind of what it looks like. It says extrude face. And when it is two sides together, although somehow I think that face before it was, let's check this one. Local translate Z. Oh, it's interesting. No. Ah, look at that. That's interesting. It's kind of like it gets narrow in that, and somehow it suddenly like pops together. That's kind of weird. I don't know what the deal is with that, but that at least got rid of that artifacting. Anyways, I didn't really describe what I'm doing there. What I've done there is, this is these list of inputs. These are your history. So unless you delete history, it remembers all the steps you used to build it, and it's like I'm changing the what you did with that tool after the fact, and it can update it, which is it can be a little bit of a risky thing to do because it can have some weird results. But sometimes it's what it can solve little problems without having to rebuild stuff. So okay, yeah, that's looking really big there. So very long. So check some reference on the pedals because that looks way too long. Unless I did that at some point, I don't know. Okay, so there's a few tips on that one. Keep going. So next one is Todd, and a lot of nice reference images in here. I've got a kind of a side-by-side setup here. So yeah, right off the bat, really cool choice of a bike. Just very interesting, nice shapes to it. Um, And yeah, I mean, you can look side by side and see differences, but clearly you've paid a lot of attention to the various shapes and forms of this, and the proportions and so forth. So it's just a very nice looking model. It's really good work. Um, so let's just kind of get into the model a little bit, and yeah, I can see you did a lot of work on the chain. To get that looking good. Sometimes, spokes are looking good, and spokes are, can be a little deceptively tricky sometimes. It might be, and we should look closer at the reference that these start out there, and then they might angle in a little bit. Let's go back to the reference image, and you can't tell from the side. So is there anything else that would make that more obvious? Maybe this one. I'm going to, let's download this. It's a little tricky to tell from this image, but what I think is happening is, you can kind of see there that they kind of go in. I guess if you look here, and I know it's hard to see, but they kind of go in towards a center line on the rim there. So they're not, whereas on your model, they seem to be. Let's select some so we can see what we're looking at. It's hard to see, but they're not angling into the middle of the rim. So, anyways, angle them into the middle of the rim is the point of this. If they all, where's they're all different. They're not all the same. But and they go through. So that makes that harder. What it means then is having, one for each side, because obviously if I rotate this one to the middle, that one sticks out. So that's obviously not going to work. So unfortunately, that would mean, having the length of these and then rotating them if you want to get that right. Unless that's probably the easiest way. I mean, the other thing you could do is like split them in the middle and then move the verts to move them to there. Either way. Yeah, great chain. Great job on the body. I think this spring got a little bit too kind of tightly wound, if you will. If we look at the helix settings, I think that actually maybe less coils, but maybe a little. Well, that's the wrong one. Width, height, is it? No, radius. Radius. Yeah, because they're kind of overlapping there. So I'm just holding down the control key to get, a little bit finer control. It's still not fine enough, so I might just type in, let's see, 0.02, 0.015, 0.012. Okay, so there's that little kind of space between them. And I'll show you a kind of a cool trick. Oh, that's not the one I wanted. We have the other one. Because they're coming down to a point there, which looks kind of cool. There's a couple nice tools to help you with that. I don't think there's anything in here that's going to do that for you, but some of my favorite tools are actually under the animation menus in this version of Maya, anyways. And then there's the nonlinear deformers, and either I think this would be a good use for flare. So, and I do go over this stuff later in the course. Whoops, what happened there? So I selected that surface, I added the flare, click this open, and then start playing with these, and flare X, and let's just do 0.5 for both as an example. Yeah. And you could, of course, do more, maybe 0.3, something like that. I mean, just a quick and easy, manually doing that with the vertices would be quite a challenge. A lattice actually would be another way to do this, probably just as well. The only cool thing about the flare that in this case a lattice wouldn't do as well is if you want a curve to it, you can get that. So see how it's kind of curving in. I'm surprised we're not getting a little bit more curve. We can try adjusting the this kind of low bound thing and the high bound. Where is the high bound? Oh yeah, that's a little better. That's the position of the top of the deformer and the bottom of the deformer itself. So yeah, getting a little bit more. I thought there was something to change through the middle of the curve is, but I guess not. I think that's kind of moving the whole thing, and then you move the whole thing, and that's like the middle of it, and then I can like then readjust the low bound and the high bound after I've done that. But anyways, so that's kind of the extra thing you get with the flare that you, because I could just do like what the lattice, I would probably want to adjust that. But if I did a real simple lattice and then got rid of some of these divisions, I don't know which one, yeah, and the lattice point, grab these, scale them in, so that that gets me there, but it doesn't get me this curve. So that's the only difference. I like I like flare. Just I don't know. Yeah, nice detail here. You got these individual bolts and screws, which is great. Bolts and nuts. Really liking this attention to that shape and here back there. It's really good stuff. Yeah. Anyway, it's a great job. Really, the attention to detail and to the shapes and all that is really good. So, um, good work on that. I think that you might want to get some reference or pedals. I mean, those are sufficient, but because you have some of this other nice detail around, they look pretty blocky in comparison. So that would be a nice addition. And then, yeah, this looking for other little details around that you can add. These kind of brake cables kind of add a nice look. You could just do a curve and then extrude a circle along that curve, and just look for the things that jump out between the two. But all around, great work on that. Okay, next up we have Ian. So yeah, overall it's looking pretty good. Got a lot of the basic shapes in there, and just very bike-like. Don't have a reference image, so nothing to compare to. But I would say spokes look a bit thick, and maybe you want more of them. The tires look kind of, the distance from here to here looks a little bit big to me. Yeah, seat's alright, but you might want to add some kind of contour to the top. These handlebars look a bit odd with the spheres and stuff, and I've said a few times before, I don't tend to combine things unless they're kind of a continuous, seamless shape, like combining two sides of a head. This is a nice touch right there. And it's a nice touch to have the thing for the air pump there. The pedals look small when compared to the rest of the bike, although it's hard to tell. Yeah, so overall it's good. Looks like you paid pretty good attention to proportions. The tires and the wheels look a little small to me compared to the rest of the bike. Like I'd expect, I mean, the tires are too wide in that distance, the thickness there, but I would expect the wheel to be a little bit bigger, and maybe the tires have a little bit lower profile for this kind of bike. Yeah, and I think maybe, rather than constructing this way, you could start with the cylinder and just do a series of extrudes, or you could, draw a curve and extrude along the curve. So a couple different options there. And make sure, again, I wouldn't combine these. I would keep them separated. And make sure, notice how this is kind of overlapping this front thing here. So I would make sure that doesn't. So either kind of pull it inside if it'll fit inside. Now I think it's still overlapping. So I just maybe make this whole tube a little bit skinnier so that you don't have those little overlaps visible. I think there's a couple spots like there and so forth. So look for those details. And yeah, look to add some other detail, the support for the seat if you want to try to do a chain. I mentioned the spokes earlier. You can do the brake handles. So look for some other details on the bike to flesh it out. But yeah, overall, good work. So next is, whoops. Next is Steven. He's got this nice turntable on the bike. Let's take a look in Maya. Let's just hide this grid. And one thing I do sometimes is just say show none, show polygons, just to kind of clean up the look of the scene. So yeah, it looks fantastic. It's just really excellent. Got like sort of this wrapped look around here. Some nice fine detail there of cables. Individual things here. This complex sort of chain ring thing here, very cool. I'm sure it wasn't easy to do. A lot going on there. Yeah, and this is looking really good as well. You could probably line that up a little bit better because it looks like it's intersecting these teeth, but you know, from any distance it's not a big deal, but I think if you just scooch it over just a touch. Yeah, and look at the back gears. Wow. Yeah, I guess so that one looks a little bit more lined up. Yeah, on that side. And you even did this thing here in the end where the spokes are curved at the end, which is great. Wheel release. Even in, yeah, it's just excellent work. I mean, there's really not a lot to say about this. As far as improving it, I'm sort of hard pressed to find sort of, far exceeds my expectations for this class in every way. Um, it's just great, really, just absolutely great. Um, maybe there's some kind of release for the seat, like either a quick release or a bolt there you can add. Um, yeah, it's truly excellent. It's great. I mean, yeah, there's, I don't know what to say. It's excellent. Um, yeah, and and I've also noticed, Steven's done a lot to help his fellow students, and definitely appreciate that as well. So, great work on all fronts. Next up is Kaylee. Um, and we've got a nice reference image here, which is always very helpful. So yeah, when a quick look at the proportions are pretty good. Um, one nice detail here is you can see the attention to the spokes, how they don't, exactly go to the center, how they're, they go to like a point around the circle. So that attention to detail is really nice. Um, and yeah, let's take a closer look at the rest of the model. I think these are kind of catching my eye as being kind of big and blocky. So, getting maybe some more reference images of what those look like, and at least making them lower profile. I think that yeah, and this is also catching my eye. So it looks like you've kind of got some of the idea of this, but notice there's just this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 7 more. So try to match that a little bit more similarly, and maybe have a lot more of this kind of negative space there to kind of match that, and then this width would be much more narrow like that one. I think that'll help because that kind of catches my eye, and I think that's the thing to do is sort of look side by side to what catches your eye. Certainly add the rims. You can use the pipe primitive for that as a good one. Um, and obviously the seat and the handlebars are very noticeably missing, but it looks like you just haven't got to that yet. Um, so yeah, I think it's a good start, and basically just keep going. Next up we have Sean, and yeah, this is looking very good actually. One thing you mentioned some trouble selecting, and I just keep in mind for selection, if you select one thing, Shift Select will select, will add to that selection. So I can keep holding down the Shift key and adding to my selection, and it sound like. And if you want to deselect, yeah, just click in a blank area. Excuse me. Um, the obviously you can marquee select like that. You can, if you have a bunch of stuff selected, you want to deselect something, you can control select it. You can also select from the outliner, and I haven't been opening everybody's outliners, but you should try to keep these more organized. Just if there's a bunch of stuff that's not needed in there, delete it out. Here's some extra cameras. I don't know whether or not you need those. It looks like there's a lot of. Oops, that had stuff in it, which I'm surprised at because it must be some history thing there. So, anyways, good idea to kind of go through, make sure things are named and grouped and so forth, and try and keep them organized. Yeah, I like the shape of the handlebars on these. That's nice. That's looking really good. I imagine some effort was put into that. So it looks like you've got a wheel, but not really a rim. So I would recommend adding a rim as a separate object to this. And as I mentioned before, like a pipe is a good primitive to use for that. The shape of the pedals are good, but if you wanted to work more on getting some, negative space in those, this chainring looks great. Really good with these coming out, and that part looks good. Um, yeah, and overall, I think, yeah, especially kind of from a distance, it's looking very, proportioned and put together. I think the seat is not looking great. It's sort of, I think you could spend more time on shaping that a bit. Um, so you might, yeah, and this bit of an odd shape there. So yeah, I think this you could spend a little bit more time on this seat. See what happens if we smooth it, how it looks. But yeah, and then, or maybe, you could use the lattice on there. I showed that earlier to kind of help shape it. So I think, yeah, get some more seat reference and put a little bit more time into that. But yeah, overall, it's a very nice looking bike. You mentioned the chain, and there's a few different. I just did bicycle chain Maya tutorial. There's a few different ones. Um, I think this is the one that I've kind of messed with the most. Yeah, so I've seen people use this successfully, but you might take a look at some of these tutorials. I just did bicycle chain Maya tutorial search in YouTube, and take a look at that and see if one of those works for you. So next up we have Pierre. Wasn't able to open this in Maya 2015 or 2017, but I did succeed in Maya 2016. Um, so yeah, I think it's coming along well. I think it looks like it's one of those bikes with those rear shock absorbers, so that's kind of an interesting challenge to do. This sort of area is looking kind of a little bit too simple and blocky. You might look at the chainring tutorial I posted, or just kind of look more closely at reference. I think the basic shapes are looking good and it's coming together. The spokes missing is sort of eye-catching, so I think that's going to be a very important thing to add. I do like the attention to the shock absorbers here and those kinds of things. The handlebar shape is looking good. Maybe a bit big. I don't know. I guess it depends on the bike. It looks a little big to me. The size of the handles and the handlebars compared to the bike, but without reference, obviously, I don't know for sure. Yeah, nice with the seat post. You might want to add some hardware that connects the seat to the seat post. And some more detail to the pedals. Maybe something at the center that mounts the tire on. Excuse me, the wheel. And you may want to do a separate, pipe primitive shape for the wheels that the tire can rest on. But yeah, I mean, I think what's nice is the overall proportions are looking good. I think the spokes kind of catch my eyes being missing, but besides that, it's mostly, at least mostly has the shape and details of a bike. So I think the seat shape is looking pretty good. Um, so yeah, good work on this. Next, we've got Stephanie. Um, I'm always a fan of people using their own bicycle if they have one. I think it's great because you can just walk over and take a look at the shapes, and it really just there's somehow being able to see an object in real 3 dimensions. I think is really helps inform having to model something. So yeah, and here's kind of a side by side comparison of one of the photographs, and um, yeah, overall, I think it matches nicely. I think there's a lot of good, accuracy to the frame as some of the complex shapes there and sort of unusual. Um, the Yeah, it's looking good overall. I think a couple things that catch my eye to improve on is these pedals are looking very small. Both the crank arm and the pedal looks very small when compared to the photograph. Um, this is looking a bit thin. Actually, there's kind of a cool way to make something thicker, if I can remember how to do this. um, if I select all the vertices of this, let me just make some more room to work here. Control space bar gives me my interface back. If I double click on the move tool and then change the move settings to normal, um, you see instead of the XYZ thing, I get this NUV thing. And so N is the normal direction, that is to say the direction that is perpendicular to the surface at that point. So if I click and drag on the N, you can see I can make something thicker or thinner. So that's a nice way to quickly and easily make something thicker in this kind of scenario. So we could do that once again here with these guys. Um, if we want. F8 to go into component mode, select all those verts. Again, I double clicked on the move tool to get here, switch to normal, and then click and drag on the line next to the N, and then I'll get thicker. Just it's a good idea to switch back to object when you're done, otherwise you might be like, why can't I move stuff? So yeah, let's go back to this. Okay. Um, Yeah, I think this is looking good, although I think that this is angled up. Um, this is a nice detail here, this kind of coiled thing you've done here. The seat doesn't match that well. I think one thing would help to kind of move up this back part. One nice thing is soft select. If you haven't used that, if I click here, shift double click there, I can select those. So if I just move it, obviously it'll just move that, but if I hit the B key as in boy for soft select, you can see it's sort of moving a lot of it, which is more than I want right now. But um, if I hold down B and then click and drag, it will shrink the region that it's going to influence, and then when I move it up, maybe get a little bigger. You can see it kind of smoothly moves up the stuff around it. And then I think that we need to do maybe just the 3 in the center, a little bit more, just a touch. Anyways, that could use some more work, but the soft select tool is a handy one for that kind of stuff. I think, yeah, the other thing is we probably want to kind of get this to curve in the back a little bit. There's sort of a curve there, so probably deserves a little bit more time and effort, but I think the soft select is nice because it kind of keeps things a little smoother. And anyways, that's going to take a little bit of time to get a good shape there, but I think that getting that kind of, that's a pretty interesting, sort of noticeable shape on the seat. But yeah, you've got some nice detail here with the rack. These pedals are looking interesting, but kind of a lot different from those. So maybe try to match those a little better. Um, I think you got the right idea getting the circles in here. It's just these teeth are looking awfully big and thick compared to the ones in the image. So maybe get those a little smaller. But yeah, it's just nice. It's got a lot of character to it. It looks good. It's sort of a unique looking bicycle, and I think you captured this sort of look of the thing. So good work on that. Next we have Byron. This is another really interesting looking bicycle. It's a cool choice. Let's take a look. Um, so yeah, right off the bat, looks like you paid a lot of attention to proportions. Yeah, it's really interesting, like how different the front and rear wheel are on this bicycle, and it looks like you paid close attention to that. And this kind of unusual bar shape here you've got, and this here. So yeah, there's a lot going on with this bicycle, and I can see that you've paid close attention to those various elements. So it's looking good. Um, Maybe get these things to either kind of intersect there, or sort of almost looks like it wraps around the front. I'm not sure, but yeah, that would be a nice addition. The 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 brake cables are very eye-catching on this one, so it might be nice to do, like draw a curve and do an extrude along that curve to get those in. Would look good. Um, and you've got this nice kind of coil shape here, which looks good. Um, yeah, there's a lot going on here. Yeah, it looks like you've spent some real time doing the gears here. I think that whoops, why is it still my controls? There we go. Doesn't want to. Anyways, um, this kind of shape here, you might want to get that ring. I think would be a nice additional touch. So you have it sort of simplified with that, which is okay, but I think that would be a nice additional detail to add. Also, I think this chain guard is an interesting shape that adds a lot to the bicycle, and you might want to add that in. Uh, but yeah, I mean, overall, this is looking really good, and it's kind of a cool, unique one. This assembly here looks a bit scaled up to me, a little chunky, so maybe just take a look at some of the other reference photos. Um, Kickstand is always a great thing to add. But yeah, anyways, overall, very good work. It's looking really cool. I think the brake handles and the assembly there would be a nice added touch as well. But really good work on this. Next up is Charlize. And yes, having some struggles with her Maya installation. Yeah, I think the help desk should be able to help you with that, the Academy help desk, and yeah, but I can see how that would be really frustrating if you don't not getting the time you need to work on this stuff, because I know it's really time consuming. But yeah, given that, it looks like you've got a lot of the basic shapes in there. So it's a good start. I think you might want to follow the chainring tutorial I did to get that shape a little bit more accurate. Look closely at making sure things kind of connect and intersect at these various points, so it looks a little more solid. Um, Looks like you got to start to the seat, but you probably want to keep going with that. Um, yeah, so really it's a start, and that's good. And considering your difficulties and everything, it's good to see that you got this start. And it's certainly, you look at it, it looks like a bicycle shape. It's perfectly recognizable. But yeah, definitely, before referring to reference, start, make sure things are a little bit more kind of closely put together, and then once make sure proportions are right, and then start, adding in the details piece by piece. Next up is Suan, and yeah, it's nice to see kind of all the steps in the progress here. Let's take a look at the bike. Yep. Oops. We've got the, did not mean to push that. We've got the reference here. And yeah, like right off the bat, it looks like a really nice match. A lot of attention to proportions and detail. It's an interesting shaped frame too. This kind of curve here, and you can see that you've paid attention to that. And even this is a nice touch where you have this starting out thicker and getting more narrow as it goes down, which is good attention to detail there. Um, so yeah, that's looking good. I think one thing is from looking at it, it looks like this kind of comes out more towards the camera and has a bit more of like a sort of a rounded shape there where it attaches at the top of the fork. But it's also nice to see you've really paid attention to the shape of the handlebars, which is good. I think that one detail that it's calling out for is the brake handles and that sort of assembly up top. It's nice to see you've done the supports under the seat. Looks like there's some kind of piece here. It might be a nice thing to add. How that attaches, like a bigger. Looks like you actually have something pretty good there, though. But yeah, maybe something a little thicker there. And yeah, I really like seeing this where the spokes actually curve at the bottom and attach there, which is really nice. Again, attention to detail there. I think that one thing that catches the eye is how these things are attaching. So getting that stuff to hook up together is going to be important to make it feel a little bit more finished. Looks like you put some time into this chain ring with the different layers and so forth. That's looking good. Maybe add just another, if you did just to add a little bit more detail to that might be nice. I mean, there's also these guys here, which could be a little tricky. Oh, you do have those guys. Okay. But what I was thinking, if I right mouse click, go to face, let's hit B to turn off smooth select. I'll select one face, shift double click on the next one. First of all, this looks, well anyways, and then I just did control space to get back here, and then I'll do extrude face, and let's scale that in. Why is it acting so weird? Okay, so there must be something. So let's undo back a few steps. So what I might do instead is let's grab the modeling toolkit and the multi-cut tool, and let's see. Oh yeah, that's giving me that thing. Anyways, what I was trying to do is add this kind of ridge here. So I'll hold down control and I'll click there and I'll click there. And then let's see if this acts more normally for us now. I'll select one face, shift double click on the next one, gets me the whole face ring, and then extrude face, and we should just be able to kind of pull that out a little bit, and then scale which way, not that way. Why is it doing that? You know what, it should kind of scale the individual faces when I'm in that mode. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. See, this switches back and forth between, that's the thickness, the offset. Oops. Well, that does it a little bit, I guess. Yeah, maybe just using the offset's better. I just held down the control key and clicked and dragged on the offset. It's so sensitive. So you can type a number too, 0.05. It's too much. Maybe push this back in a little bit. Anyway, and now my normals are looking wrong. Weird. Select the face, shift double click. I might do from the normals menu, I can do reverse. Yeah, that fixes that. The other thing is I might, right now I think the normals are kind of in the soft thing. I might want to make them, at least for this ring here, make them harden edge, so you can kind of see that detail a little bit better. Pretty subtle actually, but okay. Anyways, that's just one little thing. But oh yeah, nice work on the pedal. That's looking very narrow to me. I think this pedal would come out more. Um, yeah, and in fact, this is currently intersecting the chain ring, so you need that to kind of stick out, you know, more from that edge. But yeah, these are details. The overall bicycle is looking very nice. Good work. So next up is Falco. Um, and yeah, this is looking really good. It looks like we're missing wheels. It looks like, I mean, excuse me, tires. We've got wheels. I like this attention to detail on the spokes and, the way they're intersecting here. That's really good. This chain ring is looking nice. Pedals are good. Maybe a little more detail on those could be welcome. The seat is looking a bit thin, so you might want to kind of thicken out the bottom of that because it looks very thin right now. Handlebars good, maybe a bit thick, but I guess it depends on the reference. So maybe a little wider, a little thinner, a little wider. Um, but overall, it's looking good. Yeah, it'd be nice to see the reference it's coming from, but it's come together well. And yeah, a few things to work on and add, but overall, nice work on that. Okay.